Hello. Welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn, and today I am doing my in-depth follow-up review of the Glassboard Studio craft mat. That's this right here. So I did a first look video. I think it's been a month now. To be honest, I'm not sure how long it's been that I've been using this, but the way I like to review products is I like to do one video where I unbox it, I give my first impressions of it, and then I like to actually use it as my primary, whatever it is, for a good, long enough to make a more informed opinion about it. And I've been crafting with, as you can tell in my recent videos, the Glassboard Studio. This is, if it hasn't been a full month, then my apologies, but I've been using it like every time I craft in every video, so I feel like I have used it quite a lot and in different ways. And if all you are here to see is my final opinion on the Glassboard Studio, I can tell you without hesitation, this is a big yes for me. It's a big win. I love the Glassboard craft mat. Now, if you want to hear a little bit more of the details as to why and how it compares to some of the other things that I've used, I will try to give you a little bit of a history. But really, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll probably already know this. But I started with one of those Fiskars self-healing cutting mats, like the quilters ones that you would cut fabric on, and that was great because it was really convenient. I often did a lot of manual cutting with my well, I use a utility blade, but craft knife, whatever, and it was great. And the problem was that self-healing mats are great. You can use them over and over again, and but the thing is that they sometimes, like, I was finding the amount that I was crafting, the amount I was cutting into it, I was able to see some lines. You get a little bit of paper stuck in there. It's really hard to like really clean it so that on camera it looks nice and tidy. And it just felt like over time the mat was just feeling too beat up in a sense. And me in particular, this is just my own little pet peeve for myself and for my own videos. I just didn't like the look of that. And so what I was finding was I would replace my self-healing mat. And I felt like after doing that twice, I think, I felt like that was just a weird thing to do because the mat was perfectly good. And the only reason why I was replacing it was the aesthetic of how it looked on camera. And that's important to me as a video content creator, but it's not where I want to spend my money. So what I started to do instead was I got the scrapbook.com silicone mat. It helped that it was on sale. And so I got that, and it was great. It's got the nice 1-inch grid lines, which I'm very particular about. I basically try to only get mats for camera purposes that have 1-inch grid lines, because I feel like it's easier for you, the viewer. If I forgot to mention the measurements of something, you can more easily count out the grid lines and get a rough estimate for the dimension of something. I find myself doing that all the time when I watch other people's videos. And I hate it when their grid mat has 1/4 of an inch, because I'm there trying to count like every 4 marks to see how many inches something is, and then by the time I'm like halfway, they've already moved it somewhere else, and now I can't get a count anymore. So just knowing my own viewing habits, I always try to look for 1-inch grid mats. And the scrapbook.com silicone mat was great, and it was easy cleanup. And basically all I needed to do though was, because you can't cut into a silicone mat, that's why I have the smaller mat like this. So I can cut into this mat, and it's just like a small little thing. I'm fine with bringing on like a little extra mat, and I'll cut into this, as opposed to my silicone mat, which I left nice and pretty and pristine for video purposes. That was working really well for me, and I liked that solution. But the kind folks at Glassboard Studio reached out to me and asked me if I would like to review their Glassboard craft mat, and I said, heck yes, I would be honored to. And so they sent this to me, and I've been using it for the last, I don't know how long, but it's been a while, and I really love it because... Now, there's some things I love about it, some things I don't like quite as much, and I'll let you know what those are. Because even you all know me, if you've seen any of my reviews, whether I get something for free or I buy something that I review, I'm gonna be honest about it. But what I do love about this is that, for one, I do like the lighter look of it. It just feels like it's a brighter workspace now. You'll have to let me know as a viewer, if you prefer, the darker, because of how a card base is a lot more contrast. You can really see, what's going on, as opposed to, if I had a card base on this white mat, might be a little bit harder to see. But I do love, just in general, that it brightens up my workspace. It makes it feel like I have a more open space than the black mat. And it cleans up pretty well. The silicone mat worked really well for techniques too, but being that it's on the lighter surface, I found that it was great to do. Like, I had a video and a live stream, I think, where I was playing with the Lindy's Gang Magicals, and I just tapped the powder right onto my glass mat, and I worked on it from there. Because in the past, I had the black scrapbook.com mat, and I know that scrapbook.com, that silicone mat, comes in white. I have it too, but I was filming with black most of the time. And so I would often bring in this little waffle flower silicone mat and do my little techniques on here, just because it was white. And so if I was doing ink smushing or something, then you can actually see the color on this. But I haven't had to, I don't think I've brought this out once to use since using the Glassboard craft mat. So I feel like it's great that I haven't had to use that. I haven't had to bring out my what's it called now? I can't even remember it. The name of it. This thing. I have not had to bring this out. My make art station. It's been so long since I've had to even use this that I don't even remember the name of it. So this I used to bring out because this was magnetic, and it's a nice metal board. I could do like stenciling on here. I can use the magnets to hold it down and then stencil on this. This was easy to clean as well. But guess what? This is magnetic too, so I haven't had to use this. And, if I had started my crafty adventure with a Glassboard mat, that would have been two things that I wouldn't have had to buy. And so I think it's great for that too, because then you can, if you wanted to do some stenciling, you can just use these magnets to hold down your project. Now, I will say a note on the magnets. I'm still trying to find a less spendy and a smaller size magnet, so I wanted to get this size magnet to use just as a small little thing, but this is not strong enough. This is a rare earth magnet, it's just small, and maybe it was advertised as a rare earth magnet and it's not really, because this is just off of Amazon. But I would say kind of buyer beware on stuff like that. I'll use this for other things, but it's not going to serve the purposes that I bought it. So I should have really just bought more of the Glassboard magnets, like I said I would in my first look unboxing video. So there's that. The other thing is that, and while we're talking, let me just squeeze out some glue here. And I'll just smush it a little just so that it dries. So the thing with the Glassboard is that it is really easy to clean up, and I'll show you how I clean up that mess in a bit. I love that I can write on it with a Sharpie, just as you saw me do. If you're nervous about using a Sharpie, you can also use a dry erase marker on here. Hello. And what you don't see, because I do it this what you can view on screen is just a portion of what is the size of this mat. And so a lot of times what I do when I'm filming is I will make little notes to myself, like, okay, that's a 5 or 4x4" blah, and then I've got another piece that's 5x4" or whatever. So I'll give myself like little notes. I'll give myself notes on sometimes I'll give myself little checklists, like, okay, I need to do that video, I've started on that video, I got this project that's in the works, so works in progress. I'll make myself little lists so that I kind of remember where everything is at in the process of doneness. And a lot of that is just scribbles off camera, so you can't see it, but I can easily still read and see it, especially if it's like dimensions that I want to make sure that I mention, or if I'm doing a voiceover for something and I want to make sure, like a video like this where I'm filming it real time, I just want to make sure that I'm remembering to say all of the things that I want to mention. I'll sometimes give myself little notes off to the side. So just a little bit behind the scenes, video content creator stuff. But I love that for this. I wouldn't be able to write on a silicone mat or on a self-healing mat. In the past, what I would do is just write on some scrap paper, and then inevitably, so here's a prime example. So when I was doing the review of the Bureaucraft, I was like making myself little notes like this as to, what the settings were for each of the various things. And so I had to, find a little scrap of paper, write it all down. And I guess in this case it kind of turned out to be useful because I'm still referencing this. But this is the sort of note-taking that I could have just done completely off camera and just keep it written down like right on the glass board, and just have it there so that I can see it, reference it, when I need to use it, and then but not have it, be on screen and then not have to worry about losing that piece of paper, which I've almost thought that I've lost this 3 or 4 times now, but now I just put it like right in front of my face so that it's less likely to get lost. But it's helpful, to be able to make little notes directly on here. Now, here's one thing that I would say is probably the only downside to this, because it has replaced a lot of the things that I've used in the past, and I just don't find myself needing them anymore, like the Make Art Station, like that waffle flower silicone mat. However, this being glass, there's some pros and cons to it, in the sense that some things will scratch this up that wouldn't scratch up your silicone mats or your self-healing mat. And one of those things is jewelry, because there are some natural stones like diamond that can scratch glass. Things like ceramic mugs. If you have raw ceramic, that could actually scratch up this surface. So you kind of have to be careful if you are like me and you kind of have a cup of water, a cup of coffee by you while you're crafting. be careful putting it directly onto your glass mat. Because if it's got raw ceramic underneath it, it's got the potential of scratching this up. The other thing is that if you are relying on the grid lines, I feel like it's hard to do that, because if from my viewing angle where I sit right now, this looks like it is on the line to me where I'm sitting. But if I look up at my camera preview and I'm looking at what you're seeing, it's off. I can see that it's off. Let me get down to that corner. See how if I go to that corner on camera, it does not look lined up in that corner. It looks off. But from where I'm seated, it looks like it's on the line. Now, if I'm strictly going by the camera and what's viewable on camera, that looks like it's pretty well lined up in this corner here. But when I'm looking at it from where I sit, this looks off to me, because I can still see the bottom line down here, and it's not meeting up with the paper. And that's going to happen because this mat is, there's a 1/4 inch of glass, and the actual printed design that has the grid lines is underneath a 1/4 inch of glass. So when you're looking at something and you're trying to line something that's at this surface, but the thing that you're lining it up against is a 1/4 inch below, there's like going to be a little bit of distance that makes it hard to bridge, unless you're strictly like right over top of it, like where my camera is at. So if I used my camera to preview, and I have my monitor like right in front of me so I can see what the camera sees, but I don't always craft while I film. Like, I don't always film my crafting. Sometimes I craft just to craft, and you never see that. And so, and for the people at home, you're not filming yourself, unless you're a video content creator also. So just in terms of for practical purposes, if you want to use the grid lines, you kind of have to be like you gotta get your head right over top of it. Whereas if I used my mat and I was trying to line something up on my silicone mat or on a self-healing mat, from where I sit, that looks lined up to me. On the camera, that looks lined up as well. And the reason is because the line I'm lining it up against and the thing that I want to, line up with it, they're touching each other physically. There isn't like a 1/4 inch gap that, you kind of have to visually bridge. And so it's just a lot easier and more practical if you're using the grid lines on like a self-healing mat or a silicone mat, where the line is on the surface itself, because the lines are not on the surface, it's below the surface by a 1/4 inch. And so for me anyhow, it's harder to line up, and so I don't actually use these grid lines, unless I just need unless, for example, I happen to know that, I cut a piece that's 4 inches by blah. So I feel confident just putting this up to get a rough, idea. But if I need to precisely measure something out, I'm not gonna use this mat for that, the grid lines on this mat for it, because I just don't trust it as much. So I feel like for measuring and things, I pull out my ruler a lot more. Whereas with my silicone mat, I would very often use the grid lines on my silicone mat and count out, lines or dimensions and whatnot. So I would say that that's probably the only downside that I have found in using the glass craft mat as compared to either the silicone one or the self-healing one. But for the fact that it's magnetic and has replaced my Make Art station, for the fact that I can do inky techniques directly on here, and so that replaces having a silicone mat at all. The fact that it's pretty easy to clean up. The added bonus benefit that I can write on this surface, make notes to myself. Can't do that on either of the other two. I feel like it has a lot more wins than that one negative. So the other thing is that the whole reason for my evolution of changing my mat surfaces, the craft mat, the self-healing mat I used to cut into all the time, and that was creating those little nicks and lines, and it sort of, I felt, made my work surface look a little bit untidy. So I moved to the silicone mat, which you can't cut into at all. And so I got used to, with the silicone mat, having to need or bring on this extra self-healing mat, like a smaller one, so that I can have a surface to cut into. It doesn't matter if this doesn't look good, it's fine. It's not always on screen. And I got used to that, but technically you can actually cut onto this glass. Your metal blades, they're not going to scratch up your glass mat. And so, if you have your dies on here and stuff, it's not going to scratch it up. You don't have to worry about that. And if you are a fan of cutting onto glass, then you can do that, no problem. I don't like cutting into glass. I like cutting into a softer mat like this. That's personal preference. But so you'll still see me cutting into a self-healing mat. But if I didn't have that preference of not cutting, because I feel like cutting into glass, you're more likely to slip and maybe have an accident. So that's why I don't like cutting into glass. And also, I think it might dull the blade faster. So that's the other reason why I don't generally like cutting into glass. But you can. It's not going to scratch this. So there's that. Lots of pros to this. And I want to hear from you all who watch my videos if you prefer the lighter mat, or you prefer the darker mat, just in terms of what makes it easier to follow, because I do know that it's harder, to see white on white. And I often, for me anyhow, I use white card bases. And so the contrast of white on a black mat is a lot easier to kind of see, what all is going on. So let me know in the comments if you have a preference. I would love to hear. But in terms of the practicalness of this, I'm loving it. So cleanup is really easy. You saw me mark this up with a Sharpie. And you saw me mark it up with dry erase. It's great. This was the dry erase. So these are both great because, it's there if I'm doing other stuff, I want these notes to stay. These are great. I've done wax seals directly on here too, and that worked fine. So that was another thing I didn't mention, but that works great on here too. I just have a little vial here of alcohol, just plain old rubbing alcohol. And so you can see how this will, I've got some glue under here, so there's a little bit of that. But once you get enough alcohol, then it'll wipe away pretty easily. So you can see all that. Oh, this will be good. It's staining the glue, so you can hopefully see those glue buggers. There's a little bit here too. And I'll show you how I cleaned that off. So why didn't the dry erase go away? Because Sharpies are a solvent-based medium, and alcohol is a solvent. So you use solvents to clean up solvents. Dry erase, however, is water-based. So we're just going to use water. Isn't that cool? So just depending on what, if I knew I was going to do like a lot of water techniques, I would write on here with my Sharpie so that accidental sprays of water won't remove what's going on with the Sharpie. Because if I write here, give that some time to dry, and if I spray this with water, oh, it still wipes away. I might not have let it dry long enough. I don't think I let it dry long enough, but you can see how easy Sharpie is to clean off. And there might still be alcohol a little bit in my paper towel here too. That wasn't a really scientific test, but generally speaking, your water wouldn't necessarily clean that off as easily as you saw it just now. So I still have like a little bit of glue here, so let me show you. I don't think that's glue. I think that is Sharpie that's not quite gone. Get that cleaned off. Okay, so I've got a little bit of glue here where I was like intentionally putting some glue down. So one of the things that I have found is that, like, you know, I'll every once in a while try to clean this really, really well, but even between like a deep clean of the glassboard, like little dry glue specks would be all over here, and it doesn't really show up on camera, whereas and I think that's because it's a lighter surface, and as opposed to the darker self-healing mat or the silicone mat that I used to film on. And so every little thing seemed like it was visible. But here I feel like I've had a lot of dry glue in places still. I can still feel some, not a lot, but some. And so it's nice that it doesn't show up as much on camera. But this is how I clean it. And there's lots of ways, and I'll show you a couple things. But I just take a utility blade and I just scrape it off, because remember, this is not going to actually, it's softer than metal, is softer than glass, so it's not going to scratch it. And that's why you can cut into it or onto it, I guess. And so there you have it. I've scraped up most of that, and then what I'll do is once it's scraped up, especially if I'm using a like a PVA, a water-based glue, then I'll just spritz some water and just let it sit for a little bit, because then that's gonna soak into the glue. Doesn't have to take long, like, 10-15 seconds. It'll soften the glue a little bit and then make it easy to wipe away completely. So that's one, because the glue, cleaning off the glue on this was one of the things that I found to be harder than the silicone mat, because silicone mat, if you get a little bit of glue that's dried on there, I just took a stretch of packing tape, burnished it into my mat, and then peeled it off, and all of that glue came away really easily. I tried that on here and it didn't work. So at least it didn't work for me. So I found this to work pretty well. The other thing, like if I'm still feeling like a lot of like little glue bits, the other thing that I'll do is I'll use Goo Gone. Goo Gone is like an adhesive remover, as you can see. And so just this little bottle this is what I clean my scissors with too. I'll just put a little bit on here, and that's all you need, just like a little bit. Especially if you've already sort of mostly cleaned, wiped down like I have, you don't really need a lot. And then I'll just wipe away anything that any glue that I still feel is on here. And that will definitely, there might be some stubborn areas you might need a little bit more elbow grease, but otherwise it gets this really clean, spick and span clean. And so that's what I like to do as a way. And since I have some of this Goo Gone still here, I'm just going to use it to clean my scissors. So when I use Goo Gone though on this mat, not so much for my scissors. There's, like you can see, there's a lot of that gunk. That's just from glue. And so this still has some, look how easy it is, just wipe that away. And that was from like very little, like tipping the Goo Gone onto this. And it comes away. I mean, you don't have to drench your paper towel. You'll use less elbow grease, I guess, if you have more of the solution, but this still wiped away pretty easily. That's how I clean my scissors. So the what I do though with this after I Goo Gone though is I spray it down with water. And part of that is because there's like a little bit of a smell with Goo Gone, but also because it is some kind of chemical. So if you don't want that to be staining whatever your next project is, then you might want to just like kind of rinse your glassboard in a sense. You are not meant to submerge this in water, by the way, because you might loosen the adhesive that's holding together the magnetic plate, the grid, the printed grid, and the glass. So I have not had to like take this anywhere to clean. This is basically my cleaning routine. I scrape up the large bits of anything and then spray it down with some water. If I still find some stubborn little areas, I Goo Gone it. And then, spray it down with some more water just to sort of rinse it. But really it's to wipe away any of the chemicals. And that's it. It's a nice clean surface again. So I think for me, I'm gonna keep it, but I could be convinced to go back to my silicone mat if a lot of you viewers leave comments and you let me know that that's what you prefer, because that's what makes it easier to follow the tutorial videos. And so let me know in the comments if you have a preference. I think in terms of just practical use as a crafter, I really love this. I wish I had started here. It's a little bit of a more spendy product, but the Glassboard Studio craft mats come in different sizes, so you can always start with a smaller one. I mean, I would definitely get the largest one that you feel is in your budget and fits your craft space. But I wish I had started here, because then I would not have bought so many other things, like so many other mats, so many other things like the Make Art Station, like the Waffle Flower silicone mat. So like it kind of saves you a little bit in some of those other more specialized tools or supplies. And so maybe throwing, if you're just starting out, I would say maybe consider this first. And even though it's a more considered purchase, you might find that because of the different features and functions of it, that it could ultimately kind of be a wash in terms of cost, because every little thing adds up in terms of cost. But this is going to be very durable, and if you were likely to kind of cut into it, unlike a self-healing mat, you don't have to worry about it because it's not going to scratch up at all. So it's gonna be very, very durable and long lasting, because it's built to last. It's a 1/4 inch thick, and this has not budged either. So in terms of like video content creation, I was always struggling with like lining up my mat so that it's nice and squared and lined up with the camera angle. These are the things that I worry about when I start to hit the record button. I like to have everything nice and squared off, and that was always a little bit hard to do. And especially with my self-healing mat, sometimes like over time it sort of started to warp a little bit too, because if I accidentally like took a heat gun over it accidentally, because you're not really supposed to do that, it might start to bubble or warp in some areas. This is heat resistant. It's not 100% heat proof. I wouldn't put something super hot on here or like really directly hold your heat gun over it. But if you were gonna like emboss something and you had it hovering a few inches above, it would be perfectly fine. I think like I said, I've made wax seals on here directly and it's fine. So I kind of feel like this is a big win. And I love it, but I am curious from the viewer perspective, is the lighter surface nicer, or does it make it harder to follow along on a video? Let me know. But I'll leave links to everything if you are interested in checking out the Glassboard Studio craft mats. They have them in a variety of different colors and a variety of different sizes. I am gonna probably go pick up some of these because I feel like they're really useful. I wish they had slightly smaller ones, but maybe that's just not possible given how much thickness it has to go through in order to have that hit metal basically. So it's got to be a really, really strong magnet. But so that's gonna probably be my next purchase, but you can get these on the Glassboard Studio website as well. So that's it for this video. Thank you again, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.